How much money have you spent replacing reels that should have lasted 10 more years? Most spinning reels don't break all at once. They die slowly, one bad habit at a time. Every mistake on this list shaves months off the life of your reel without you noticing until the day it fails mid-fish. And every one of these mistakes costs you money, not someday, right now. The gears inside your reel are wearing down a little more every trip because of habits you don't even know you have. $100 reel should last a decade of regular use. Most of them don't make it past 4 or 5 years, and the owner blames the manufacturer when the real problem was in his hands the whole time. The last one on this list, about spooling the wrong line weight, puts stress on every component inside the reel every single cast. But we'll get there. The first one is the mistake I made for 20 years before anyone told me what it was doing to my gear. You're fighting a fish. The drag is screaming, and your instinct is to keep reeling. The handle is turning, but the spool isn't picking up line because the drag is doing its job, letting line slip so the fish doesn't break you off. The problem is what happens inside the reel. Every time you crank the handle against a slipping drag, you're grinding the main drive gear against the drag system in a way it wasn't designed to handle. The gears are meant to turn the rotor and pick up line. When the drag is engaged and the spool is locked in place by a running fish, that rotational force has nowhere to go except into the drag washers in the gear teeth. The teeth on the main gear and the pinion gear are machined to mesh at specific angles, and when you force them to rotate against resistance they weren't built for, the contact points wear unevenly. Over time, this rounds off the gear teeth and creates a grinding sensation you can feel in the handle. That rough, crunchy feeling in a reel that used to be smooth is almost always caused by this one habit. Not sand, not salt, not age, just thousands of handle turns against a slipping drag. I did this for 20 years before a reel technician pulled apart my favorite reel and showed me the inside of the gearbox. The main gear looked like someone had taken sandpaper to it. The teeth were visibly rounded on one side where the loading was heaviest. The fix is simple, but it goes against every instinct you have when a fish is running. Stop reeling. Let the drag do its job. When the fish stops pulling or turns back toward you, then reel to pick up the slack. If the drag is slipping, your hand should be off the handle. That single change will add years to the life of every spinning reel you own. The next habit is one most of us were never taught was a problem. After a cast, you close the bail by turning the handle. The reel clicks, the bail flips over, and you start your retrieve. It works fine. Every reel is designed to do this. But that mechanical snap puts a sudden shock load on the bail spring every single time you do it. The bail spring is a small coiled piece of metal inside the rotor housing, and it's the single most common point of failure on spinning reels across every brand and every price point from $30 to $300. When you close the bail by hand, you control the speed and the force. The spring absorbs a gentle load and resets smoothly into its resting position. When the handle does the work, the bail slams shut under full mechanical force at whatever speed the gears are turning, and the spring takes the entire impact in a fraction of a second. Multiply that by a few hundred casts per trip and a few dozen trips per year, and you're looking at tens of thousands of high-force impacts on a part the size of a soda can tab. I flipped the bail by handle for my first 15 years of fishing. I thought that was what the feature was designed for. After replacing 2 bail springs in 3 years on reels that were otherwise in perfect condition, a guy at a tackle shop told me to start closing it by hand. I haven't replaced a bail spring since. It takes half a second. Flip it with your finger after every cast. Your bail spring will last the entire life of the reel instead of failing every couple of seasons and costing you $20 and a trip to the shop each time. When you get home from a trip, you set your rod in the corner or hang it on the rack. The drag is still cranked to whatever setting you were fishing with. That compression sits on the drag washers all week, all month, sometimes all winter if that reel doesn't get picked up again until spring. Drag washers are made of carbon fiber, felt, or Teflon depending on the reel, and all three materials deform under constant pressure. The washers flatten, develop a memory, and lose the ability to slip smoothly under load. The result is a drag that stutters instead of releasing line in a steady pull. That choppy, inconsistent drag on an older reel, the one that grabs and releases in jerks instead of a smooth hiss, is often caused by nothing more than years of storing it with the knob cranked tight. Before you put the reel away, back the drag knob off until it's barely finger tight. You should be able to pull line off the spool with almost no resistance. The washers decompress, relax, and hold their original shape. Tighten it back to your fishing setting when you pick it up for the next trip. If you fish multiple reels, make this part of your pre-trip routine the same way you check your knots and your line. 10 seconds of effort that preserves the most important mechanical system in the reel for the entire life of the drag stack. Some guys take their reel to the sink or the hose after a saltwater trip and run water right over it, or worse, dunk the whole thing in a bucket to soak. Your reel is not a submarine. It has seals, but those seals are designed to keep out splashes and spray during normal fishing, not resist the pressure of a direct water stream or full submersion. Water from a hose hits with enough force to push past the O-rings and lip seals that protect the internal components. Once water gets inside, it carries salt crystals, sand, and minerals directly into the bearings and gearbox where they crystallize as the water evaporates. That crystallized salt acts as an abrasive every time the gears turn. The corrosion starts on the bearing balls first because they're the smallest components with the tightest tolerances. Within a few weeks, a bearing that was silent starts making a faint clicking sound that gets worse with every trip. The right way to clean a spinning reel after saltwater is a damp cloth on the exterior, a light wipe on the spool and bail, and a drop of reel oil on the handle knob and bail arm pivot points. That's it. If the reel needs a deeper clean after heavy salt exposure, take it to a shop that does reel service or learn to disassemble it properly with the right tools. A hose and a bucket of water will destroy a reel faster than never cleaning it at all. You set your rod down on the bank to retie, change a lure, or grab something from your bag. The reel is resting in the dirt, maybe sand, maybe gravel. 1 grain of sand in the wrong spot does more damage than 100 hours of normal use. Sand works into the bail arm pivot, the line roller bearing, the handle knob, and any gap between the body and the rotor. Once it's inside, it acts as an abrasive on every moving surface it touches. That gritty feeling when you turn the handle, the one that sounds like a coffee grinder, usually started with one careless rod placement on a sandy bank. I've seen guys set a $300 reel face down on a concrete boat ramp like it was a hammer. The aluminum housing picks up grit that gets carried into the rotor gap on the very next cast. Lay your rod across your tackle bag, across a cooler lid, or lean it against something that keeps the reel off the ground. If you're wading, hold the rod or tuck it under your arm. If you're bank fishing and need both hands, stick the rod handle into soft grass with the reel facing up, not sideways into the mud. Keep the reel away from dirt, sand, and gravel at all times. This is especially critical with lighter reels that use smaller bearings. The tolerances inside a $100 reel are tight enough that a single grain of beach sand can score a bearing track permanently. That damage doesn't heal with oil. Once the track is scored, the bearing vibrates on every rotation for the rest of its life. If any of this is helping, subscribe. We cover gear maintenance every week. Your reel needs oil, not once a year, not when it starts feeling rough. After every 5 to 10 trips, depending on conditions. Saltwater trips count double because the corrosion starts within hours of exposure. Most guys never open a bottle of reel oil in their lives unless the reel is already grinding, and by then the damage is done. Salt residue, dust, dried moisture, and microscopic metal shavings from normal gear wear accumulate inside the reel and create friction on every surface that moves. A single drop of reel-specific oil on the line roller, the bail pivot, the handle knob bearing, and the main shaft keeps everything spinning freely and pushes contaminants away from the contact surfaces. Don't use household lubricants. Don't use sewing machine oil. Don't use cooking spray. Use oil made specifically for fishing reels. The viscosity is formulated for the tight clearances inside a reel body. The wrong oil is either too thin and migrates into the drag washers where it kills their grip, or too thick and gums up the bearings. A $4 bottle of reel oil lasts 2 or 3 seasons and protects hundreds of dollars worth of gear. 1 minute of lubrication after every handful of trips is the cheapest insurance you can buy for equipment you depend on every time you're on the water. This one creates more long-term damage than most guys realize, and I still catch myself doing it on reflex when a fish runs at me during the fight. You're casting, and before the lure hits the water, you start turning the handle out of habit. The bail snaps shut mid-flight. Your cast dies 15 feet short. The lure plops down with no momentum. That's annoying, but the mechanical problem underneath is worse. Every time the bail snaps shut under power from the handle during a cast, the bail spring absorbs a shock load at the worst possible angle. The bail wire is fully extended under maximum tension, and the spring has to absorb the full rotational force of the handle closing it from that position. Over dozens of trips and hundreds of casts, this weakens the spring and fatigues the bail wire itself. You'll notice it when the bail starts failing to lock open during the cast. You flip it open, start your backswing, and it snaps shut before you release the line. That's a fatigued spring that's lost its tension from years of being slammed shut by the handle. On higher-end reels, a bent or fatigued bail wire means the bail doesn't seat properly when closed, which creates a gap where line can catch and tangle during the retrieve. The fix is discipline and nothing else. After you cast, wait for the lure to land. Watch it hit the water. Then close the bail by hand with your finger and begin your retrieve. The extra second it takes to pause and flip the bail manually saves you from the 2 most common spinning reel failures: a broken bail spring and a bent bail wire. Both of those repairs cost more than the reel oil you should have been using from the start. Some sealed drag systems handle more pressure than others. Higher-end reels with carbon fiber washers have more tolerance for tight settings, but even those have a mechanical limit, and most guys blow right past it without knowing. When you crank the drag knob past the point of firm resistance, you're compressing the washers beyond their designed range and putting stress on the threads of the drag knob itself. Those threads are usually plastic or soft aluminum, and they weren't built to handle repeated over-torque. Once those threads strip, the knob spins freely without engaging the washers, and the entire drag system is done. No adjustment, no repair without replacement parts that may not even be available for your model. Set your drag to roughly 1/3 of your line's rated strength and leave it there. If you're fighting a fish that needs more pressure than your drag setting allows, palm the spool with your free hand for momentary resistance. That gives you instant, controllable pressure without putting any stress on the drag knob threads. The moment you take your hand off the spool, the drag returns to its safe setting and the fish can run again. Your garage in July is 130 degrees. Your truck bed in the sun is worse. Your reel spent the afternoon in what amounts to a convection oven, and the damage starts within hours. That heat melts the grease off the main gear and pinion gear inside your reel. The grease is there for a reason. It reduces friction, dampens noise, and protects the metal surfaces from direct contact under load. When it melts and runs off the gears, it pools at the bottom of the reel body and leaves the teeth exposed. The next time you use that reel, metal is grinding on metal with no lubricant barrier until new grease migrates back into place. It never fully does. The gear surfaces are already marked by then. Heat also bakes line memory into your spool. Monofilament and fluorocarbon are thermoplastics, which means they reshape permanently when exposed to high temperatures. That coiled line that springs off the spool in big loops after sitting in the garage all summer isn't just annoying. It's structurally weakened at every coil point, which means it breaks at lower forces than its rated strength suggests. Store your reels inside the house, in a closet, a spare room, or anywhere the temperature stays below 80 degrees and relatively stable. If the reel lives in your garage year-round, at minimum, bring it inside during the summer months. A reel that costs you $150 deserves better than a shelf next to the lawnmower baking in August heat. This last one is the mistake that ties back to everything else on this list, and it's the one most guys never even consider because they think bigger line is always better protection. Your reel has a line capacity rating printed on the spool or stamped on the box it came in. That rating exists because the internal gears, the drag system, and the bail mechanism were all engineered to handle the forces generated by that specific range of line strengths. The engineers who designed your reel calculated how much torque the gears can absorb, how much pressure the drag washers can distribute, and how much force the bail can take on a hook set. Those calculations assume you're using line within the rated range. When you spool 20-pound braid on a reel rated for 6 to 10-pound line, every fish you hook puts more torque on the gears than they were designed to absorb. The drag has to work harder because the line won't break before the components reach their stress limit. The bail spring takes more force on every close because the heavier line creates more tension as it wraps. The handle bearings carry loads they weren't built for on every single retrieve. It doesn't fail on the first trip or the 5th. It fails on the 50th, and when it does, you blame the reel instead of the mismatch. Going too light creates a different problem. Thin line on a large spool overfills easily, creating loose coils that tangle around the bail and jam the mechanism. Those tangles put lateral force on the bail arm that can bend it out of alignment over time. The line capacity on the spool isn't a suggestion, it's the engineering specification that every other component was designed around. Match your line to that number. A reel running outside its rated range is a reel on borrowed time, no matter how much you paid for it or how careful you are with everything else. A reel running the right line weight with a properly set drag, stored with the knob backed off, lubricated every few trips, and kept away from dirt and heat will last a decade or more. Every reel that died early in your hands probably had 3 or 4 of these habits silently working against it at the same time. Every fix on this list is free. The damage is silent and cumulative. The cost is real, and the reel you save might just be the one already sitting on your rod rack right now.